Jesse James was one of America's most famous outlaws. He and his brother Frank were never captured. In 16 years of robbing banks and trains, they were never captured. But in the end, he was shot by one of his own gang for a reward of $10,000, shot in the back while he was hanging a picture. There's a song about that, and I'm going to sing it for you here in just a minute. But I used to have a great uncle, Uncle B, and he always said that we were related to Frank and Jesse James. Now, my grandmother thought this was absolutely terrible and didn't want him to talk about that. And so years later, I was doing the early TED conferences out in Monterey and was at a party after the show. And I was sitting next to Ann Wojcicki, who said that she was starting a thing called 23andMe, a genetic testing service. I said, that's great. Maybe I can find out if I'm related to Frank and Jesse James. That's what I was thinking. And so when I got home, I signed up, I spit in the tube, sent it in. And about a month later, up came on the computer 23andMe, and in the corner it said, famous people you're related to. I clicked on it, and it said Frank and Jesse James. So Uncle B was right. He wasn't talking through his hat like my mama said.
Jesse James was it who killed many men. He robbed the Glendale train. He robbed from the rich and he gave to the poor. He'd a hand and a heart and a brain. Oh, Jesse had a wife who mourned for his life. 3 children, they were brave. But that dirty little coward who shot down Mr. Howard has laid poor Jesse in his grave. Hi, I'm David Holt. And this week on the Celebration Express, we're visiting the home of the legendary outlaw, Jesse James.
Some folks view Jesse James as a hero, like Robin Hood. Others a bloodthirsty criminal. But no matter which Jesse James you believe in, his legend is forever fixed in American folklore. Jesse was raised with his older brother Frank in a small farmhouse in Kearney, Missouri. During the Civil War, they joined a band of marauders which fought against the Union troops throughout the South and West. And after the war, some of these bushwhackers continued their rebellious ways, and it's believed that Frank and Jesse chose this path.
It was on a Wednesday night, if I remember right. They robbed the Glendale train. Oh, with the agent on his knees, he delivered up the keys to the outlaws, Frank and Jesse James. Now with his brother Frank, they robbed the Gallatin Bank and carried the money from the town. And the people, they did say, for many miles away, the bank was robbed by Frank and Jesse James.
Jesse James didn't invent bank robbery. This had been done many times during the war, but he did add a new twist to the holdup.
In 1866, Jesse James and his gang rode into Liberty, Missouri in broad daylight. They shot up the town and robbed this bank, the first time that had ever been done in peacetime. Jesse's brother Frank walked up to the counter, told the teller he was robbing the bank. Well, the teller didn't believe him, so he jumped over the counter, hit the teller on the head with his gun, and the teller believed him. He opened up and they got away with $62,000, more than $6 million in today's money.
Jesse James wasn't the only outlaw around Missouri, but he was definitely the most famous. Tales of the James gang were told from coast to coast. These weren't ordinary criminals. They had style, and they also had their own publicity man. John Newman Edwards wrote about their exploits, which covered some 10 states and spanned nearly 2 decades. This publicity helped create the legend of Jesse James, says local historian Milt Perry.
The editor of the Kansas City Times, John N. Edwards, was an unreconstructed rebel and a good newspaperman and knew a good story when he saw it. When he saw these young men doing this, and he realized they were also Confederate veterans, he splashed these stories on the front page of his paper. Other papers picked it up, and Edwards compared them to Robin Hood and Dick Turpin and Lochinvar and wrote how they should be acting. They apparently read Edwards' stories and started acting that way, so one fed on the other. It's just fascinating that they were the best-known outlaw country and were being sought for nearly 18 years. Were never captured. Frank surrendered and Jesse was killed by a gang member. And yet during all those years they lived normal family lives, never hid out in caves, never wore disguise. The only aliases that they used were names like Woodson or Howard.
He was standing in a chair, just a dusting pictures there, when he thought he heard a funny noise. When he turned around, that bullet smacked him down and laid poor Jesse in his grave. Oh, Jesse had a wife who mourned for his life. 3 children, they were brave. But that dirty little coward who shot down Mr. Howard has laid poor Jesse in his grave. This is David Holt, out on the road with the Celebration Express.